Welcome back to Newsday. We are talking energy today. A comprehensive report handed down by the ACCC today that essentially says the energy system as it's operating at the moment is broken, and it's meaning that you and I are paying pretty exorbitant electricity bills every quarter. What this report says is that if all these 56 recommendations are implemented, well, Rod Sims is saying that power prices and power bills can be brought down for households by about $400 a bill. Now that is significant. The question is, will all these recommendations will they be implemented? It's not all up to the federal government either. Malcolm Turnbull has just pointed out that it doesn't require any federal government legislation. It might require some regulation though, and legislation to be passed through each state parliament. So where are we at now? Well, this all leads up to the negotiations on the National Energy Guarantee. Rod Sims was asked about whether this report does endorse the government's central policy here, the National Energy Guarantee. This is what he had to say.
The National Energy Guarantee is a necessary step to bring affordability to our energy market, but it's not sufficient. We've got 56 recommendations. The National Energy Guarantee is one of them.
Joining me now live here in the studio is Liberal MP Craig Kelly. What do you think of the report, and what do you think of what Rod Sims had to say there about the neg?
Look, firstly, I've often been a critic of the ACCC over the years, but on this they've done a very good job. They've done a comprehensive job, and in fact, a lot of the things I've been asking for and arguing about for a number of years, the ACCC have in this report. So today I'm very happy. The job now is to make sure that we try and get as many of these recommendations in as quickly as we possibly can, and that is going to require the cooperation of the Labor Party to get these things where we need legislation through the Senate.
Well, Malcolm Turnbull pointed out that legislation's probably not required for the bulk of these recommendations. So, what do you have in mind in particular?
Well, there's a few things. Some of these will require the states to do different.
Well, the
things.
neg does, doesn't it?
The neg does. So the neg requires there'll also be some federal legislation on the neg. Now, as Mr. Sims said, the neg is a step in the right direction, but there's still a little bit more that needs to be done. So where we're talking about underwriting the construction of more baseload power, I think that has to be part of the neg. We need to somehow or other structure that into the neg. Otherwise...
Why do you need to do that?
Well, otherwise you've got where will the neg actually stand? Now, the neg will set a carbon intensity level for the electricity sector, which reduces over the time. Now, it's very hard to do that in isolation if you've got sort of one hand doing that, you've got the other hand underwriting baseload generation.
That's not what Rod Sims just said.
Oh, well, I think it was. He said that the neg by itself is not enough, that you need these other steps. Now, I think, yes, I think he's right there, but I think you've got to try and incorporate those together as one total step.
But why do you need to incorporate them together? Because doesn't the neg go to more things than just affordability? It goes to lower emissions, yes. It goes to reliability, and it goes to lower prices as well. What Rod Sims seems to be concerned about is a market failure in many ways when it comes to, he's called it firm energy. We will call it dispatchable power. So he doesn't list what those are, but essentially he's talking about the government underwriting new projects and new players in the market. I don't understand, why you'd want to complicate the neg any further.
Well, that would affect some of your settings in the neg and how they would actually work. Now, as I said, we'll have a emissions intensity set for the electricity sector. Now, how that actually works in with the neg, where that emissions intensity
only
sector
if
is...
You're assuming coal, though.
Not necessarily.
But it only affects that energy intensity setting if you're talking about coal.
And also if you do gas, you'll get a lower emissions intensity setting. If you do it some type of renewable battery, it's even lower still. So those things I don't think can be isolated from what the actually would be bidding or the reverse auction to get more baseload power.
Craig Kelly, all of a sudden you're concerned about emissions being low.
No.
Is this what this report has done to you?
No. Look, I am concerned about price. We have to put price before Paris. That is very important. We've now got electricity prices have increased in Australia faster than anywhere else in the world, and that is unacceptable to industry. The ACCC have called this restoring electricity affordability and restoring Australia's competitive advantage. They are saying that we have lost our competitive advantage and we've lost electricity affordability, and that's why we've got to put price before Paris.
But I'm really interested as to why you would want to involve this underwriting in the neg, though, because you know the politics of all of this. You support the neg still?
I'm supportive of the neg, but the settings, the devil of this is always in the detail.
But you've got to wrangle the states. You've got to.
Well, that's part of our job.
Through the Parliament.
The states.
Why couldn't you keep these separate and still have that?
Well, because we don't want the states to try and some of these Labor states to actually slip off the hook. Right? It's very important we get this right. You said the ACCC, we're talking $400 or $500. That's extra money put into the pockets of consumers in New South Wales, similar amounts in other states. Now, we can't have a few people in the Labor Party dictated by the Greens smashing this and stopping that from happening.
Let me ask you, because in the briefing that Rod Sims did after this report was released, he was talking about getting new players in the market with this recommendation under Chapter 4. Now, he said that it would encourage essentially projects that are more ready to go, and they involve gas and renewables with battery. He didn't say coal. Do you think that this plan, this recommendation put forward by Rod Sims, would see new companies come onto the market willing to fund a new coal-fired power station?
Okay, firstly, one of the reasons we're not getting the coal-fired generation here to replace Hazelwood, to replace the Northern Power Station, plan to replace Liddell we're getting in Australia, we see hundreds of these coal-fired power stations being built overseas using Australian coal. The reason we're not getting that is because of the political risk. The investors are not prepared to take the political risk.
Would this take the political risk out of it?
So this should take a big part of the political risk out of it. And that's what we need to do. And that's why the government, if it's some type of reverse auction or purchase agreement, offset agreement, however it's actually structured, they'd all be very similar, but they would do the same thing. They would take the political risk out of it. And that's what we need to do. Now, if we take the political risk out and we give a level playing field to all the technology and we say we want baseload power, and that's baseload 24/7, 365 days a year. It's no point of having like wind and solar or other intermittents with an hour's worth of backup. They've got to be able to back themselves up for what is the worst case scenario. And when you look at all the numbers, and look, if we had cheap gas in Australia, we could go down the track that the US have done and put more gas into the market. But with our resources, the coal resources that we have, that is by far and far away the cheapest way to generate.
If this recommendation was implemented, as Rod Sims has envisioned it, do you think we would see a new coal-fired power station?
I think so, yes. I think if you looked at it, what is the cheapest way we can get more baseload generation in? If we look at the options, you have coal, you have gas, you have some type of intermittent renewables with some type of backup. And when you look at all those numbers and you price the backup correctly, coal is still by far the cheapest.
Okay, well, if this is implemented and those projects and those companies don't come forward, would you then accept that the market is operating as it should and you know, new coal heli plants just aren't the way of the future?
We'd have to look, well, say they're not the way of the future. There's 35 or 50... There's 50 countries around the world that have looked at this and have done the sums, and they say coal and heli coal is the future for us. That's the cheapest way. So these 50 countries got it all wrong. Is everyone in the world? Obviously not. The reason that we're not getting that investment here, again, goes back to the political risks and the legislative settings that we have that don't provide that level playing field. We fix that legislation. We give all technologies a level playing field. We take out that political risk and let them all bid. And if it should be that tidal power and geothermal with some type of battery technology can outbid coal, well, I say all the better for it. We're not wedded on coal for coal's sake. People like myself often get painted as pro-coal.
Yes.
We are pro-low-cost electricity.
You're talking about an even playing field, which the neg seeks to do.
Well, it
seeks to and suggest this program, this idea of underwriting baseload power projects. In your view, does that level the playing field, which what you've been calling for? Then, you know, if all these implementations are put in place, these 56 recommendations, is that levelling the playing field? So it is technology agnostic and we are getting the cheapest price? Again,
it will depend on the final details of how this is done, but it has the potential.
What kind of details are you worried about?
Okay, what you would look at you'd look at the number of years that was required to be there for. If it was only for like 5 or 6 or 7 years, a new coal-fired power station needs a return over 20 to 30 years. So you'd need enough length of time. Secondly, you would also need to make sure about what the reliability requirements are. Now, there's no point saying, oh, yes, we can have baseload and we can back it up for 1 or 2 or 3 hours, which on some of the costings of the wind and solar, they say, oh, yes, they're cheaper with it backed up, but that's only backing up for 3 hours. What happens after that 3 hours? You've got to be able to deliver that electricity to the grid 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You've got to make sure you've got that reliability obligation in there. Now, when you put all those things in, that gives you a pretty level playing field. Now, if I'm wrong and coal's not the best option and they can do it cheaper, I said, with another way, look, I will be all for that.
Okay. Well, you sound like a happy man today.
Oh, I am. Look, I think that a lot of things that the ACCC have put in there, the things that I've been arguing for, and people sort of say, oh, your ideas are, your position is sort of in some extreme position. Now what I've been arguing for a long time is now, I think, middle of the road stuff that the ACCC is recommending.
Okay. It sounds like a happy man then. Craig Kelly, thanks so much for your time today. I will have Peter Khalil back at some stage. I think he might be.
He's hiding. He's in hiding.
He's in hiding. Okay, he doesn't like the report. Fancy that. All right, Craig Kelly, thanks so much.
It's not a